goals, and suggests alternatives at waituntil8th, that's with the numeral 8.org. Whether or not your kids take the pledge is up to you, but it is food for thought. With Soundbites, I'm Alan Davidson for CBS News.
I'm Larry Magid with the Connect Safely report. If you do a Google search, you might come across images that could be disturbing or inappropriate at work or for children. Typically, these are either sexually explicit.
Are you concerned with the state of America, your state, and your community? Then you're in the right place. This is the Rutherford Magazine Show with host Mike Sparks. He and guests are here to talk local politics, history, faith, and freedom.
All right, Rutherford Magazine Show. I'm your host Mike Sparks. Got a big show tonight. And I've got to meet Tiffany. Tiffany, she's a producer. Tiffany, what's your last name?
It's Tiffany Parker.
Parker? Yeah, we've met a couple times. You're from Chicago, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, what brought you to Tennessee?
I went over to Huntsville, Alabama for a while. I was there with my family, and then we kept traveling a lot.
Yeah.
And I said, we need to get closer to the airport, and then I came across this town, and then I've been here ever since.
Yeah. So did you go to MTSU?
Yeah.
Oh, you did? What's your major?
Journalism.
Oh, it is? Oh, yeah. You and I talked about that. Yeah. Where did we meet? Because you just asked about my mother, and I told you she had passed.
We met here during the Round Talk table around probably a 9 o'clock show. I was with Dr. Cross.
Yeah, Dr. Cross, awesome guy.
Yeah.
Man, he's one of the best. That's a lot of folks, if they know, they may not know who Dr. Cross is, but that's Jennifer Cross, Channel 5's father. Yeah, and he's just one great guy. When I first met him, my journalism professor, TV news professor, Dr. or Dan Eschenfelder.
He's still there, yeah?
Yeah, Dan.
And his wife. Yeah.
Well, Dan, I was taking TV news, because I see what's going on in the media, and I see a lot of fake news. I think you and I may have talked about this, and there is fake news. I mean, there's corporate journalism. It's really all about the money in many cases. Not all, but in many cases. And my professor kept telling me, Dan, and I know Jeremy knows Dan, and it was during my election, man. They had literally fake news on me. And Dan said, boy, what the media is doing to you is unethical. I said, yep, you think? That's why I'm back in school learning journalism, brother, to get my own story out there.
That's right.
And he was telling me, he said, man, you need to take on the issue of low pay of adjunct professors. Oh, I didn't know what adjunct professors.
Dr. Cross was talking about that.
Yeah.
That was that day you had an interview on it.
Yeah, and I didn't know what they made. He asked me one day, and he says, what do you think I make? I said, I don't know, $50,000, $60,000. He said, I'm going to make $18,000 for the year. I was like, really?
A college professor.
Yes. And so now his wife's got a doctorate, so she teaches ethics and journalism. Christine Eschenfelder, sweet lady.
She's very nice.
She really is. And so they were coming at me really hard during the election 4 years ago, and I said, man, I'm gonna have to take off. He goes, for how long? I said, about 2 weeks. And I said, but I'm gonna take on the issue of low pay of adjunct professors. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a plan, but the good Lord had a plan. And my assistant Marvin, we had access to the camera from what's that, NX something 100. Okay. And I'm not that good with the camera, but my assistant Marvin was pretty decent. So I called Keith Claxton, one of my professors, and he was a probability stats professor. He says, well, you need to call Dr. Krause. Never met Dr. Krause. And then I got Dean, or it was Dean, Elizabeth Fitch. We interviewed her. It's on YouTube. Anybody wants to see it, just type in low pay of adjunct professors, Mike Sparks. And you know what that brother done after I done that interview?
What'd he do?
He goes, Representative, can you accept a campaign donation? I was like thinking about ethics. I thought, well, is this unethical? Because I'm like, well, I'm just a college student, and I said, he teaches political science. I said, man, I've always wanted to take a political science class. I just never had a chance. I said, it may be hard for me to go. I may have to miss. He said, well, just come on. Man, he helped me $500 on my campaign. Yeah, and I run a resolution, but I know how the General Assembly do. They'll kill a bill. They'll kill it. What I did, I run a resolution, And what I did, I got it all the way through the committees, got it on the House floor, and I had 2 Democrats stand with me and 2 Republicans who were adjunct professors. Okay, and so they stood with me, and I called out the president's pay raise. The president got a $56,000 pay raise the year before. So I called it out live on the floor, and I didn't say his name. A lot of people know who I'm talking about. But I said, folks, that's 3.5 adjuncts.
Yeah.
Why do you give the top guy a $56,000 pay raise? And we neglect this guy over here making $18,000. But Dan told me later, he says, hey, man, we got a raise. And he said, we think your efforts help. And I ended up taking his class, political science class.
Yeah.
It went great. And, you know, he says, well, he really doesn't say what on side of the fence he's on, but he's just good common sense guy, put it that way. But that guy, he comes on the air, what, 9 o'clock? 9 o'clock?
About 9 o'clock.
Thursdays?
9 o'clock Thursdays.
Thursdays.
Table, yeah.
So folks, I listen to him, Dr. Krause.
Yeah.
He used to be the town manager of Oak Hill, where the governor's residence is, and then he was a town manager, I think, in California, 2 different cities over there. But sharp guy. He still stays in touch with his students.
He do.
But boy,
he still teaches at Malo right now.
yeah, and I think he's also at Columbia State, or he was teaching like 3 different colleges.
He does a lot.
You
He
know.
wears a lot of hats.
And Jennifer's sweet. She took on. We think we've uncovered $96 million with a reference-based pricing legislation that we've got, and there was an audit performed. It uncovered 1.5 million of overcharges, but 1.5 million in the scheme of $2 billion healthcare budget is not that big, but it's $1.6 million that we're able to recover. But that's a whole nother issue. But in the studio, I've got my friend Taylor. Taylor, I know I'm mispronounced your name. How do you say it properly?
Wangrid.
Wangrid.
Yeah.
Is that French?
It's Norwegian.
Norwegian.
Yeah, Norway. Got a couple grandparents that came over
Really?
from Norway.
You look Norwegian with that big
I was
beard.
about to say, you look Norse.
Yeah, I get that every once in a while.
You know, and I've got Jeremy Smith in the house, our faithful intern. How y'all been doing?
Pretty good, Mike. How you doing?
Doing good. How long we planned this entire show?
Oh, it's been long planned.
Long planned, like for a year.
Yeah,
Well, I'm glad you was able to come in today.
couple hours. Yeah.
Yeah, I just said, you want to come to the radio? We go, what are we going to talk about?
Let's do it.
Anything you want to talk about? We were talking, Jeremy, do you want to get into that song? I mean, I know we're probably not a lot played on the radio, but talk a little bit about the song. Y'all know more about it than I do.
Have you heard the that song by Oliver Anthony?
I assume that's what
Yeah,
we're talking
everybody,
about. Yeah.
It seems like everybody and their mom has heard it, and it's resonating with a lot of people across not just America but across the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading comments on that video from it saying like, tuning in from whatever country in Europe.
Oh wow! Really?
Yeah, it's making waves over there in Europe too.
What about Norway?
Oh, I'm sure. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Norway.
Yeah. I know
Yeah.
that. I know that after the debate last week, he put out a video saying that they played that video and the song before the debate and whatnot, and got all of their opinion on it. And he was like, "I was talking about all of you up on the stage, and you guys don't get it." So the message speaks to the people, but the politicians don't seem to get it for some reason.
Yeah.
And I think that says a lot about the rich men north of Richmond.
Well, Jeremy, you're the first to tell me about it. I didn't know anything about it because I think I was asking for a segue song. You were, that sometimes I'm in the studio, hey, what do you think? We'll play something, and you mentioned a song I had never heard it. That was a few weeks ago.
Have you listened to it yet, Mike?
I've listened to it. I've been so busy, man. I haven't stopped.
Got to check it out.
I really haven't stopped.
Yeah,
It's pretty catchy.
Yeah, it is pretty
Play on
catchy.
repeat.
What inspired him to write it?
Richmond, north of Richmond.
Yeah.
Is that exactly what it was?
He had some warehouse job, and was just working hard for overtime pay. And getting screwed over, and decided to write a song about it, and ended up making it big. And he's not going to sign, and he wants to he wants to make it a ministry versus a record
So he's a
deal.
believer.
He's a believer,
Yeah.
100%, which is pretty great.
My son Peyton was talking about him. I guess did he have a addiction problem years ago or
He
something?
did. He was
Overcame
a,
addiction.
According to him, he was a really bad alcoholic, and just one
Alcohol?
day,
Yeah.
one day he just broke down and said, God give me a sign.
Made a deal with the Lord.
Yeah.
You think you can do that?
Yeah.
Taylor's gonna be like, what? Tiffany, you think you can make a deal with the Lord?
I do.
I think you can.
Yeah.
I know my
I got
past.
one going on right now. So.
Do you? Yeah. I mean, there's probably people like, oh no, you can't make a deal with the Lord. I made a deal with the Lord years ago. I wanted my wife. I said, man, Lord, if you'll give me my wife, Felicia, I'll serve you and I'll raise my kids up in church. And I've done it. I've stuck with it. May not be perfect, but I do think I think the Lord will bless you if you're faithful. I think you can, because we had a guy on the radio a couple of years ago, Gene Garcia with Teen Challenge. I met him at Tennessee Christian Chamber of Commerce, and he was on heroin. This guy was on heroin, living in the woods. And I remember him telling me he's seen a truck. The back of the truck said something about hope. And he said, man, that's what I need. I need me some hope. And he just prayed, Lord, if you'll just heal me. He said, dude, I just had this, just like something just come over me, and I had no desire. And now he's reaching hundreds of other men and women that have been, succumb to addiction. So I do think you can people make deals with the devil, I guess. Why not make a deal with the Lord?
Yeah.
The Lord uses people in mysterious ways, right?
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah. And you can't discount. He's not going to just use people in suits and ties.
No.
He's usually not.
I mean,
it's
look
usually
at
average
the
people.
Bible. It's full of sinners and wretches that are used for Christ.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
One of my favorite scriptures, Tiffany, is 1 Corinthians verse 27. So God will use the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and the weak to shame the strong. And I've seen that, but I haven't really got to study the song. My son just talked about it, but I love stories of an underdog overcoming something.
Yeah.
And, you see a real blessing where that person blesses other people. I mean, my friend Marty Luffman's, Marty sadly had a bad car wreck and, can't walk. Here he is, successful guy and wealthy. And, here about 3 months ago, he asked me about a car. I used to own a car business. And I said, well, I've got my wife's Buick that just really, my son was driving a little bit, and I bought her a Jeep. And, man, he bought that little car. Beautiful lacrosse. You'd probably seen the chrome 18-inch wheels. And he gave it to a little Coptic Christian girl, little 16-year-old girl. Her parents can't even speak English. I didn't know. He just said he wanted to help somebody. And I show up at the house, a little birthday party that she had. The parents were there, and they're real poor. And I'm not going to get choked up on the air. But beautiful little girl, 4.0 GPA. Looks like Cher. Remember Sonny and Cher? She likes Cher, but at 16. And he goes, there's your birthday present. She goes, huh? What? And she goes, there's your birthday present.
Yeah.
She said, what? He said, that car. I bought you that car. And she goes, I thought I was here to get a puppy. And she started crying. But I told him, I said, dude, that was your best day. He goes, oh, no, I've had better days. I mean, if you know Marty, that's what he would say. I said, no, I'm telling you, the Lord's going to bless you, brother. You bless the least of these. I mean, it's one thing to go help somebody that can help you in return, but you help somebody that can't offer you nothing in return. I mean, you talk about that's something right there.
Yeah.
But we got to get back to those basics, man.
Yeah, it's all about community and like people local. Yeah.
Yep.
That's one thing I like about Brother Shelby Hazard. I remember when we interviewed him for being the pastor about, I guess it's been 4.5 years ago, maybe 5. He opened up and started talking about, when he was in his 20s, just drinking and acting up and I think he landed in a pond with his truck. And it's like he's lucky to be alive. And I thought, wow, who's opening up like this in a old school Southern Baptist church? And I thought, this brother's real.
Yeah.
And I was like, bam, this is the guy I'm voting for.
Raw.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
It's raw. It's
and
real.
we need more of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's probably why that song's connected with folks.
Yeah. Yep. And unfortunately, a lot of the churches nowadays, have kind of lost that rawness. And I hope we can find it soon. I hope that we can rally and bring the truth back.
We need it.
One of the things I like about Pastor Hazard is that when he starts getting real deep into Scripture, and it's really hard hitting. I like the fact that he said, "This is not feel good preaching.
Yeah.
This is not feel good
Yeah.
preaching." Yeah,
That's really what it is today. It's about prosperity preaching.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just make you feel good, and we don't have to deal with the background noise. We don't have to deal with what's going on at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just look nice. We're
Yeah.
falling apart.
yeah.
It's not
Oh,
real.
man, we are.
It's not real.
Well, that's why,
Sugarcoat.
we're
Yeah.
wanting to do this. In fact, John DeBerry should be calling in about 5:20. Hopefully he remembers to call. John has got an awesome. You know who John DeBerry is, Tiffany? He marched with Dr. King as a young man.
Okay.
He was there at the mountaintop speech.
Okay.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
But what they done, they kicked him off. They took him off the ballot. Talk about nefarious. It's
Here in
nefarious.
Nashville?
No, the and I'm not trying to pick
In
on
Memphis,
Democrat Party.
in
They took
Memphis.
him off the ballot. He was a
Okay.
26-year lawmaker.
Yeah.
But, he was common sense.
Yeah.
He was pro-life. And
Was he running as a Republican, Democrat?
no,
in
he's
Memphis?
Democrat. He's
Yeah.
an old school Democrat.
Yeah. Okay.
He should be calling in. John's now the advisor of the governor, and so hopefully he remembers to call in and say a few words. And Marty Luff is going to call in about, I think, 5:45. But now we're wanting to do a revival. We're doing this revival. We're calling it Revive Rutherford in Laverne at Grace Church. Other churches are welcome to set up a booth. If anybody's got a nonprofit like Habitat for Humanity, I think I talked to Tennessee Mental Health Cooperative. I think they're going to come out. I think the Sheriff's Academy is going to set up a booth. But it's September 23rd from 2 to 5 at Grace Church, Randy Berg, at the corner of Old Nashville Highway and Stones River Road. And Pastor Brenda Bryant. Brenda, she's an African-American pastor, and her church burned down about 7 years ago. And here's what's cool. Not one Bible was singed and not one cross was singed.
Wow.
Sounds hard to believe, doesn't it?
Unbelievable.
I mean, the whole place was like, just to the ground.
Yeah.
And they just went and picked up all the Bibles, picked up the crosses. But it was kind of a partnership with Grace Church, and John's going to be speaking. I think John should arrive about 2:20. We tried to get the governor to come in. His schedule was already booked, but September 23rd, Grace Church. We call it Revive Rutherford. And we're looking for other churches that would want to do the same thing. I've been so busy, I really haven't even had a chance to talk to my own pastor.
We need to reach out to Parkway.
Can you help me with that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you all just help put it together?
100%. Yeah.
Tiffany, you know what confirmation is?
Yeah,
So you're a believer, right?
that's right.
Okay. You're a lovely lady, by the way. Isn't she beautiful?
100%.
I mean, she really is.
Thank you.
How old are you?
Thank you. I can't.
Sorry.
Every time you see me, and
You're like 22?
I'm like, I got to stop being honest.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm not.
You can't ask that on the radio, Mike.
I'm terrible. I'm terrible with names. I meet people and I can't. Sometimes I can't remember things.
Yeah.
You just got a lot going on. But here's what's cool when I talk about confirmation. Randy's not your typical pastor. I mean, and I say that respectively. Randy is just old school. I mean, he's deer hunter, bass fisherman, but he's a guitarist. He plays guitar. And I said, man, how'd you learn guitar? He said, I was in a reform school. He said, yeah, I was bad. And, he had his mom and dad, but they put him in reform school. He said there was a church that had a little ministry. They would bring guitars over. And he started learning to play guitar. But he went to a pawn shop. This is pretty cool. Beside Goodwill in Smyrna by Little Caesar's Pizza.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been in that pawn shop. But he said he goes in there right after our first Revive Rutherford meeting. Just a meeting. We had a little brainstorm session. He goes in a pawn shop, sees this beautiful guitar. I think it's called a Stratocaster, something like that.
Stratocaster.
Yeah.
Stratocaster, okay. And he picks up, he's like, man, this thing is awesome. He looks at it, it's like that, like, what do you call it? Aqua, not aqua, what's the other color? That looks like aqua.
Teal.
Yeah, like a teal.
Aquamarine. I know he says it's
No,
not aquamarine, but
it's a beautiful guitar.
Yep.
And he looks at the guitar. Guess what the guitar's name is? The Revival Series. Is that not cool? He was like, whoa, this is wild, you know. But he's going to be there, and we were talking. I said, man, that guitar needs to be your theme. Because there's power in music. Music will bring people together, you know. Last week it was funny. No, this is very politically incorrect to talk about, but you've probably witnessed it. I had the three ladies up here, and it was a black girl, Lachelle, sweet, all of them sweet, Jolie Shipley, and Chuck Ward's wife, Kathy, and we're talking about addiction, overcome addiction. And I was talking about Tupac. You know who Tupac is? Do you? Yeah. Okay. And so when I said, you know, Tupac is, and I looked at Lachelle, you know, and it was kind of one of them office moments, you know, and they're like, She looked at me, yeah, I know Tupac is, but I was talking about the song "Dear Mama." If you listen to the lyrics, he's talking. He said, "I never shed a tear over my father. He wasn't there. You know, how could you shed a tear over somebody that was not there? You know." But he found love in a gang. But you know, one thing I've been talking about is we got to reach this younger generation and see. John's hard hitting, John DeBerry, and he was preaching that message. Man, they come against him. Yep. The system, the deep state. Hey, there's a deep state, brother. I
100.
promise you. And if anybody disagrees, there's not deep. I promise you, there's deep state. Look what happened to John. But here's where God's good. You know what happened to John after that?
What happened?
The governor hired him. He went from making like $50,000 to $176,000. You know where his office is, Tiffany?
Where is
It's
it?
at State Capitol.
I'll look
First African American to be on the first floor of the state capitol. Shouldn't that make breaking news? Nope, it doesn't. You know why? Because the corporate media doesn't want to cover it. It does not fit the narrative. And one thing they'll teach you, and I don't know if y'all have ever had it, but in a graduate communications class I had it. It's called agenda setting theory, narrative. And there's different types of agenda setting theories, but that's why you see things distorted, like at the Capitol today, troopers, escort moms out. I mean, that's that narrative. It's
Propaganda.
Not disruptive protesters where you can't conduct a meeting. But what we got to be careful. I've told my party, first of all, we don't need troopers in there. Just get a sergeant at arms. Just keep it down. Most people are going to be respectful. It just the optics look bad. But hopefully John will call in here shortly. So guys, y'all make it to church today?
Yes.
I didn't because I was feeling under the weather this morning. We finally had rain yesterday and today. Like we've needed it for the past week. It's been brutal out there.
Yeah.
But because of the rain and because of the weather change, I got what's called a barometric pressure headache.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, really?
It was bad, Mike.
Really?
I was
Never heard of that.
You haven't?
Barometric pressure headache.
Yeah, barometric pressure
I'm
headache.
writing
You've heard of it?
No.
Tiffany's
I'm
taking
writing it
notes.
But it's stuff
Sounds
like that.
legit.
It is legit. It's very legit. What happens is that when that happens, your body reacts to the changes in the atmosphere of the planet, or not just the planet, just in the air. All that pressure and all that fluctuation of the molecules in the air.
Yeah.
Something triggers like chemicals in your body to start either going into overdrive or just haywire, and it results in a massive migraine. So that's what I was dealing with this morning. I woke up at like 7, and I'm like, my head is pounding, and I told my mom, I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it to church today because I got a headache going on.
Yeah.
So I started like drinking coffee, taking Tylenol, and did some nasal spray, took a shower.
Does coffee help with headaches?
Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you stop drinking coffee, like just cold turkey.
I drink a lot of coffee.
Yeah, if you stop drinking coffee for like maybe a day or so, you're going to get a headache the next day.
Gives you a headache.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why when you start drinking coffee, you can't stop.
Get you hyped up.
Yep.
Yeah. I would have had one earlier, but I didn't have time. I was being late getting up here. I done drank probably a pot today, Is that John? Hey, John, how you doing?
Hey, Mike, how you doing, sir?
Doing good, sir. I was just talking about your story, and how's things going with the governor? You keeping him straight?
Oh, well, it's an interesting time in Nashville. It's good working for Governor Lee, and I think right now we're all waiting to see what happens from the special session.
Yeah, I had texted some folks of the day and asked them to ask him if he'd speak tomorrow night on that gun safe legislation that they're carrying. I think it's the best bill that hopefully will pass during special session. It's $1.6 million tax cut. It encourages people to lock up firearms. And as you know, John, we've had a rash of stolen firearms in Memphis, Mountain City, and Nashville,
right.
And a lot of juvenile crime. I said it in committee this week. Tennessee has now. There's different stats. One showed we're number 3 in the nation for violent crime. Another one said 8. Either way, we're in the top 10. But I don't know if the message gets relayed to the governor or not. But I just thought if he come in there and talked about Kyle Yorlet, the young musician that was killed with a firearm by the two juveniles, that fiscal note on those juveniles, if they serve, I mean, it's really heartbreaking that they got a 30-year sentence. I mean, it's really heartbreaking, or 25-year sentence, but that's about a $1.5 million fiscal impact to the taxpayers. And that mother, if you go back and look at that story, she really was searching for help and couldn't get help. But I appreciate the governor. I know he's had a little bit of criticism, but I mean, no matter what you do, you're going to get criticism these days.
Well, you know, I was watching some of the pundits, and I don't know what you want to. I don't want to pick a fight with the media either. But the fact of the matter is, I know that, you know, folks say, where has the governor been?
Yeah.
I know that you all, both the House, the Senate, and the governor, and the governor's staff have been working all summer long.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Everybody didn't just go fishing and playing golf.
Yes, sir.
And call a special session and show up for special session. You've had meetings. You've had
yes.
all types of talks. Y'all have talked about model legislation. The legislature, I have got to give you guys credit. You have been involved and engaged in this issue all summer, and so has the governor. He
yes.
has. I think all of us sweated blood and tears at what happened at Covenant. And this yes. was something we didn't want to see happen in the state of Tennessee, but it has happened, and now we have to just buckle down and take care of the people's business and make sure they're safe.
Yes. Well, John, when you look at the times, and that's what I like about your message. You know, I emailed your office the other day just to confirm the September 23rd, the Revive Rutherford event with Randy Berg. You've met Randy. You've met Pastor Brenda Bryant. Love to have you over there. You know, I think we've got you down 2:30 to 3:30. We invited the governor, and he already had something planned that day. But your message that you gave at World Outreach, I think when I looked on YouTube, it had, I believe, 10,000 views within about 42 or 48 hours or 72 hours right in through there. But I love that message that you share. One part that I like what you said is about our enemies, you know, the America's enemies and how they love to see us fight. Can you kind of share, you know, a little bit about your talk that you gave there? And you also gave it with Pettis Reed over there at the Church of Christ over here off of East Main.
Well, you know, Mike, one of the reasons why we're friends is because we can talk real frank with one another.
Yes, sir.
And just basically call a spade a spade. I think that any of us who are aware of what's happening with around us in this world realize that our enemies, while we are allowing various domestic issues and internal issues to divide us and weaken us and force us to hate each other, we're working right into the game plan and the plans for our destruction and takeover that was set over 60 years ago,
yes,
or most certainly over 50 years ago, when Castro said, I believe in 63, that he was going to take over America. They were going to take this nation without firing a shot.
Yes, sir.
And I had some young people say, he didn't say that. That didn't happen. I told them to Google it.
Yep.
And once they did, they realized that statement was made. And I said, basically, the principle is as old as mankind. The oldest and most effective tactic of war is divide and conquer.
Yes.
And when we're a divided nation, when you got white and black, north and south, rich and poor, the educated, the illiterate, and all around us, all we're doing is drawing boundaries between ourselves and burning bridges. And this does not make for a nation. We claim to be the United States, but yes, we're becoming more and more disjointed, less united. And we have folks right now who have absolutely no allegiance to this nation. They
yes,
won't say the Pledge of Allegiance. We don't teach civics. Kids don't talk about why America is America. With all of our faults and failures and flaws, America is still one of the most wonderful places, if not the most wonderful place to live
Amen.
in the world.
Yes.
And so, why don't we talk about America with endearing terms anymore?
Yes.
And, the kids are not even taught it in school.
Yes. John, I was telling Tiffany here, she's out of Chicago, right, Tiffany? Chicago.
That's right.
Yeah.
Chicago,
And I was telling her about you. Can you share when you were as a young boy with your dad and some of what you've seen with Dr. King? Do you mind sharing that?
Well, I grew up in that era. I grew up in an era where the nation had to change. There were some things that had to change in America.
Yes.
They had to change, and we had a generation that had the courage and the backbone to say that things had to change. You had a young preacher who probably, I'm sure, when he left Morehouse, it was not his intention to become the most internationally known black man on the planet, the best known black man on the planet, and be a leader of a movement that would not only change America, but that would change the world. But it did happen. My father was one of those men, the unsung heroes, who marched with Dr. King, went to the march in Washington, integrated schools and public places in Crockett County, Tennessee, and taught us. And we've passed this on. I've passed this on to my daughters. My daughters have passed this on to my granddaughters, that there is a civic responsibility. And just as I watched my father and my mother stand in the 60s, you and I know there have been times when we may have been the only ones standing on the floor of the House and speaking about some of the things that we spoke about. So, I remember very vividly Dr. King's last speech when he said, "I may not get there with you."
Yes.
And that, even to this day, it's a chilling thing to think about. This man is saying this on the eve of his assassination. And the next day he's laying in a pool of blood from a coward's bullet.
Yeah.
So, but they changed the world. They did it with class. They did it with courage. Black men and women, white men and women, Jews, Christians, rich, poor, all joined hands and made America a better place. And if America is going to be a better place, even to this day, folks have got to have that same type of unity.
Yes, yes. The you and I had even talked about. You even seen the German Shepherds, the dogs unleashed, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I see a lot of, and I don't mean to discount anything. Anytime Americans speak up, the Bill of Rights give us the right to speak our mind. We have freedom of speech. We have freedom of the press.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of this freedom is used in a way that's going to destroy our freedom.
Yeah.
When we stood there in downtown Memphis looking at barking dogs, men with axe handles and billy clubs, folks calling you all types of names and racial slurs, a woman hit with a fire hose that almost undressed her in public. That was a time when folks had to stand and they were looking danger in the eyes.
Yes.
They weren't going through this mock, dramatic, put on, play on a type of activism that we often see. I'm not saying all of it.
Yeah.
But a lot of this activism today, and I say, what are you mad at? You never drank at a colored water fountain. You've never gone to a segregated school. You've never sat on the back of the bus. You've never gone to the zoo on Tuesday, what was Colored Day. In other words, how is it that so many of these young folks who are making all this noise today went to private schools, have had all types of advantages that the last generation fought, bled, and died for, and at the same time, they don't respect that generation or appreciate that generation. And that's what bothers me more than anything.
Yes. Well, that's why your message, and I was talking to Brenda the other day. I haven't got to talk to Randy, and I know you're busy, and hate to bother you, come all the way from Memphis up here.
Oh,
and,
you're not bothering me.
Yeah, Memphis is a long way. I mean, it really is a long way to drive.
Mike, it's an honor to do so. I'm not in the legislature anymore where, we can duke it out and do a lot of the debates that we did back in those days. But I appreciate the opportunity that Governor Lee has given me, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to people about what we stand for in the state of Tennessee.
Yes.
In the House, in the Senate, and in the executive branch. And in spite of what people think, I think we have a lot of good people in Nashville.
We do.
I think we have a good governor, and I think that there are a lot of folks like yourself that while we're not going to agree on everything, we have agreed not to be disagreeable. We know how to fight and talk to each other and respect one another's differences.
Yes.
And that's what makes for a good democracy.
Yes. Well, your message needs to be out there. In fact, while I'm sitting here talking, I'm thinking of Tiffany here that's a journalism major, that maybe she, could drive to Memphis. I mean, I know it's a long way, but it'd be a good guy to interview.
That's
Tiffany.
Right.
We're glad for her to come to Memphis.
Yes.
Yeah, we're glad for her to come to Memphis. We got good barbecue.
Yes.
And we got good folks down here.
Where is the best barbecue down there? That's always a big debate.
Oh man, you're not getting me in trouble like that, man. You're not getting me in trouble. Now I can tell you what. Now I'm in a family of cooks. Both of my daughters are good cooks. My brothers and sisters are good cooks. So you come to Memphis, you're going to get good food.
Well, John, tell Tiffany you've got a journalism media background. Will you share some of your background with her?
Well, I came up in the days when my dad was on radio constantly. We published a family newspaper called The Informer back in the 60s that talked about various issues in the civil rights movement. My mother fought against abortion, and it was printed in our newspaper. My dad did a radio show, so I cut my teeth in radio back in the 60s, sitting beside my dad while he did a radio show about what was happening in the world, what was happening in the state of Tennessee, and what was happening in the nation. I went to Freed-Hardeman University. I worked on WFHC, which is the radio station there. I left there. I went to WBBJ in Jackson, Tennessee, where my eldest daughter was born in Jackson. And I worked there at BBJ, left BBJ, went to WHBQ TV, Channel 13 in Memphis, where I finished out my career for 17 and a half years in television. My middle brother just retired from NBC. He was there 30 years. He was a senior producer, went all over the world doing the Olympics and others. I trained him at Channel 13. He went to NBC and became a senior producer. He retired as a senior producer just last year. So we have a very extensive background in radio, television, print, marketing, advertising. That's where, kind of a family business, so to speak. And we've been very fortunate.
Well, John, let me ask you, you've got Roland Martin interviewed you. Tiffany, who Roland Martin is, CNN journalist. Well, used to be CNN. I think he's in Atlanta. He interviewed you, and I really liked the interview because a couple of guys that's there even was kind of sticking up for you. Has any of those journalists followed back up with you about what you're doing now? And because you've got a modern day Joseph story, what they meant for evil, God used it for good. I mean, I see it as a modern day Joseph story. I don't think corporate media sees it, but has anybody followed up to tell your story?
Well, you have your 15 minutes of fame, Mike, and then you go to work or fade back. I have worked, I have spoke all over the country in the last couple of years. The last 3 years, I've spoken all over the country at churches, at public gatherings. I spoke here recently at the gathering in one of our cities. And, there's so much going on right now that my story has kind of been put on the back burner, because there's so many folks who are capturing the media's eye for various reasons. But from time to time, there are those who call to see how things are going, working with the governor, what I'm doing. But, I'm not in the spotlight, which is fine with me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I get the opportunity that the Lord gives me to speak, like we're going to come to Rutherford and speak, and I speak in those type of occasions all over the country. So, I still stay quite busy.
Yes.
And as visible as I care to be at the moment.
Well, I appreciate what you do. I know I was sharing on the air there's a deep state. I know people think, oh, you sound like a conspiracy theorist. But I know what they done to you. And if folks don't see that and see that as nefarious, evil, demonic, I don't know what is. Our forefathers would be upset about that. I brought it up when the governor was in at my chili cook-off a couple of years ago and said, we need to care about John DeBear. We need to care about open and free elections. But, John, I had something happen about 3 weeks ago. Have you ever heard of a Dr. Cedric Oliver in Gary, Indiana? He's a pastor up there, African-American pastor.
I don't know him, but I do know about what you're getting ready to tell.
Okay. Well, I wrote a story about it. I've got my paper. I started issuesoffaith.com or TennesseeLedger.com. But if you go to Issues of Faith, it's one of my lead stories. I've seen some young guys, young African-American guys talking about this video about this Dr. Cedric Oliver. And, the guy's outspoken. A lot like you, but you're a little bit more outspoken than he is. But this guy was outspoken. And some people literally got up and left the church. That's okay. You can leave if you want to. He said, but I'm going to call the truth out. And I love what he said. And it wasn't white folks. It was black folks talking about it. Young guys, young cats in their 20s talking about this. And I've Googled the newspaper. I Googled the church. And I called the church. I've never just called some pastor I don't know and out of state like that I just want to see if he'd call in the radio. Dr. Cedric Oliver. And about 4 hours later, the business manager of the church calls me. He says, sorry to inform you, the pastor passed away. And I thought, whoa, this is kind of odd. And I haven't got to study the timeline. But I just thought, here's a guy, an African-American guy, bam. He's nailing it. He's just calling this stuff out, and all of a sudden he just passes away. I know there's probably people who don't like me sharing this on the radio, but I'm like, man, that's just really kind of odd. And that's what's worried me a little bit about you, John, just to be straight up with you. That's why, I'd love to see your message to these young guys like Taylor, to like Tiffany here. She's probably just 21, 22, Tiffany, and Jeremy here, or my assistant, Marvin Williamson that he knows your story, or Brandon Woodruff in Chattanooga that was the main protester over Nathan Bedford Forrest. He became an intern. We got along great. But these young guys need to hear your story, and they don't want your story out there, John. You know that, don't you?
Well, it's not the narrative that a lot of folks want right now. There are folks who want the narrative that folks are chomping at the bits and hate the country, and everybody is poor and folks are not prospering, and it's okay to smash and grab and tear up stuff and steal stuff. Yeah. One of the things that Dr. Martin Luther King said before his death, and the young people really need to go and take a look at this. We celebrate this man every year, but they're getting further and further and further away from the principles he stood for, lived for, and died for. Yep. He said that we must not, and I'm not going to, the quote is not exactly proper, but he said we must not do things that are illegal in the name of what we're trying to do. Yes. He says that compromises the whole movement. You don't steal because you say of my rights. You don't kill. You don't commit crime. In essence, he said that's not part of the movement. That's not part of who we are and what we are and what we're striving to do. Yes. And if you go back and look in the archives of his speeches, he said that over and over and over for folks to follow the law. He had a peaceful movement. But I would like to say this to the young person there in the the studio with you today and young people everywhere. Both of my daughters are extremely involved in helping to make the world a better place. One
Yes.
is an attorney that works with juveniles. The other is a therapist that works
Yes.
with children, many of whom are extremely traumatized by adverse childhood experiences and terrible things. They are who they are because of what they've been exposed to their whole life.
Yeah.
Our young people are our ambassadors that we send to a time that we won't see. At some point in time, the young lady sitting there in the studio, my grandchildren and others, they have to take over this country.
Yes.
They have to, and they will get the opportunity to decide what type of country America is. And the whole thing is, even Jesus said it, that a house divided against itself, he said it first, cannot stand. We can't have a house to where we're teaching young people in the classroom. You're teaching the white kids to hate the black kids to hate the white kids. They don't have to say pledge allegiance to the flag. You teach them to hate the country. You tell them America is a racist, no good, evil nation. You tell them all of this while our enemies are building the most powerful armies in history.
Yes.
That's what our enemies are doing.
Yes.
And while we're 40% down in recruiting for the military, and we're teaching our young people that they don't really, you're going to tell a kid to hate the country and then tell them, put this uniform on, pick up this rifle, and go defend this nation. No.
Yes,
a man will not die for that which he does not believe. So why would they die for a country that they have been taught is worthless, no good, and has no value?
Yes.
And so we've got to take an introspective examination of ourselves and some of the things that we have done and that we are teaching. We are destroying this nation right before our children's eyes.
Yes.
And they're going to be the recipients of our neglect if we don't get this right and get it right quick.
Amen. You know, John, when you see, you know, I shared with Governor Bill Lee, you know, the gun safe legislation that we had passed 2 years ago. I told him the story about Kyle Yorlett, you know, the young musician, just 23 years old. You know, we always get beat up. We never really get our message across. I was telling him, I said, man, he needs to do a public service announcement right there in office with the state seal in the governor's office and talk about Kyle Yorlett, talk about that family that was reaching out, and look at the fiscal impact. What frustrates me with my own party is there's a few elements of people that don't believe in counselors. I don't know what it is. They don't believe in therapists. They don't believe in social workers. While we've got 22 veterans a day that used to be that would die by suicide, those folks need access to therapists, counseling, to try to help them. That's what kind of bothers me with a certain element of people that I happen to see sometimes, that we all need to you know, I don't look at these things Democrat, Republican. I worry about where this country is going. I lost my temper in a men's Bible study yesterday, and I didn't drop profanity, but I dropped some words that are pretty bad, I guess. You know, I mean, it got everybody's attention, but I said, I'm telling you, Nashville doesn't have the answers. It doesn't have the answers is a revival. This country is the answers in men's hearts, and the only thing that's going to turn that around is Christ, and that's what motivated Dr. King. You know, it wasn't laws. I mean, look at his fire and his passion. He gave his life for that. But John, I sure appreciate you coming in September 23rd.
If I could say this, Mike, before you
sir.
leave, Mike, is that we've got to understand something. We believe in life, and we defend life. We fought for life. We fought against abortion. You and I and others there on that floor fought passionately against abortion and taking the life of the unborn, because that's what we believe in as Christians. But also, we've also got to believe as Christians that once that child is brought into the world, that is a human being that deserves a whole lot better than what some of these children are given. They're being abused. They're being starved. They're being neglected. They're being raised up around nefarious and illegal activities. You got little girls and little boys who don't know normal. They never known normal their entire life.
I talk about that.
And when they commit crimes, I'm not excusing it, but I'm saying, what do you expect from a kid that's been beat up their whole life, starved half to death their whole life, cussed out, don't even know their own name at home, and the only place many of them got a chance to eat and be treated like a human being is school, and they closed the school for 2 years.
Yes, yes. Well, folks can listen to John's message more September 23rd, 2 o'clock. And we're looking for another church. Hopefully my church, I know my pastor has followed you, Brother Hazard. Tiffany, go ahead. And you wanted to share something just now about the schools and
about the school.
reaching the kids. Go
you
ahead.
Got it. So I talk about that every day with my family. And I just want to thank you for adding what you were saying about the nation. Because I homeschool. I have a 10-year-old. And
you got a 10-year-old?
I have a 10-year-old.
And you're just 21?
And then, like I was saying.
I'm teasing.
And so, but what I wanted to say was, so we homeschool with some co-ops with classical conversation and different things. And I just wanted to say what you said was sobering, because that's why we're doing our best to instill the love of the nation, and we have to be honest about the history. Yeah. But at the same time, I told my son when we leave the country, we are Americans. This is what we are. This is where we were birthed. And I have family that have served this country. I have uncles that are sheriffs. Amen. And, so I just wanted to say thank you for what you said. And I want to share that with some of the homeschool parents. So I'll let you guys have the floor.
Yes, and I appreciate what you just said, the fact that you've got to teach the history. Yes. But, the thing is, you can't unwrite history. You can't rewrite history. You learn from history.
That's right.
And that's what America must continue to do. That's what we did in the 60s. We learned and we changed and we altered. We didn't just change America. We changed the world. We changed South Africa. We changed other places where there were oppressed people. Why? Because they saw the courage of Dr. King, Rosa Parks, men and women like my daddy and mama, whose name are not in the history book, but all over this country, they changed the world. So she's absolutely right. We need to teach the history, but we need to teach it as history.
Yes.
And make sure that our children continue on to a better future.
Well, Dr. King gave a quote, we're not makers of history, but we are made by history. A lot of history, sometimes it's dark.
Made by history.
But, there's forgiveness and redemption plays a big role. Well, thank you, John. John, if you see the governor tomorrow, tell him they need to shoot a PSA about Kyle York. I'm telling you, that is a story that'll resonate. This is the only bill, when I was talking to him, I said, Governor, this is the only gun bill that Tennessee Firearms, NRA, Voices for, or Moms Demand Action, that all those folks could stand in one place and be appreciative. It's the only bill, and it's going to pass tomorrow night. The Senate's slow walking things. John, you need to go over and talk to some senators. I've been really disappointed in them that this House is moving forward on mental health, on other areas, and the Senate. I don't know what's going on over there, but we're going to probably have some fireworks tomorrow. I hate to say it, John, but thank you. I'll see you September 23rd. Go ahead.
Well, fireworks are good, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes you have to, you got to break some eggs to make an omelet.
Amen.
So, you got to do what you got to do.
There's going to be some omelets in tomorrow. Okay. Well, thank you, John. We'll catch up, brother. All right. Take care, man.
Take care, Mike.
We'll see you.
Bye-bye, Representative.
Take care, sir. What a great guy. One of my goals is to have young people. Tiffany, you're a believer, right?
That's right.
After I seen what they done to John, I talked to him on the phone. Right after, and he got a little choked up. We were on a prayer conference call with some lawmakers, and somebody asked how he's doing, and you could hear his voice crackled. And I called him back, and I said, "Man, I like the quote that Dr. King had. He said, it's not the words of your enemies that hurt the most, but the silence of your friends." When he's in a Birmingham jail over not getting a parade permit. That's my understanding of it. But I felt like the Lord told me, hire filmmakers and go to Memphis and tell his story and I hired some filmmakers. Thank you for Pettis Reed. It made a donation. Some other people made donations, raised a little bit of money. Michael Carnes, Jeff Green Films. We shot 4 videos. It's on YouTube. Type in John DeBerry, Mike Sparks. You'll see it, and you'll hear John's story. John may not want to share some things he shared with me. This is deep state, folks. It's deep state. If you don't believe me, look what happened to John DeBerry. Taylor, Jeremy, go ahead and give y'all some. What do you think about John's story? What do you think about where we're at today?
I think it rings true. I think it needs to be heard, everywhere. Brings unity, brings peace. It speaks locally to our local community and how we can contribute to our local community and love one another, and keep all the craziness out of it and take personal responsibility for actions.
You look at that song that Oliver Anthony. I haven't really heard the song, but even with Dr. King, my understanding he was speaking up for trash men, the sanitation workers. Mm-hmm. This Oliver Anthony, it sounds like he's talking about the economics. I mean, maybe these things need to be talked about.
Yeah.
Yep.
When people can't afford to live in their own community,
That's right.
something's wrong.
That's right.
I bought my first house at 22. Give God the glory for it.
Yeah, just talking about John. When I first went to that speaking function, at
you did that for a class too, didn't you?
Yeah, that was. I was there. I was there as
with Pettis over there.
Yeah, no, I was over there. I actually sat my phone on the pew and just recorded his speech, and that's how I was getting my sound bites for the paper. But
he just graduated December.
Yep.
Congratulations.
He's in the graduate program.
But
now.
as I sat there in that pew and I was listening to him talk, I said to myself, like, this man's the real deal.
Yeah,
this man is the real deal.
He is.
And so,
well, people looking for authenticity.
There you go.
Yeah. Tiffany, what do you think?
Well, like I said, it was very sobering. Of course, like I said, I homeschool, so it was something that I want to bring to my community this week when we meet, when we talk, when we say where we want to bring our program, because like you said, you see what's going on in the school. It's everyone homeschool or everyone is doing what they're doing with their families, but it's a real big reason why we chose to do what we do, because we want to instill certain values. And like you said, they did it with class and they did it with courage, and that's not something that we do today.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wrote that down.
Well, I've got this Wednesday, if y'all can make it, Wednesday at the Smyrna Event Center. I want to thank Mark Lewis and Brian Hercules, town manager. We're putting an event together. We're calling it a leadership roundtable with Dean Dr. Urban. I see so much disconnect and infighting among elected officials. Dean Urban was the Jennings Jones College of Business dean for many years, just retired. But 11:30 at the Smyrna Town Center Wednesday, no charge. There is lunch there if you want to buy lunch. But if y'all can make it, appreciate y'all being there.
I was going to say, Mike, before we head out, I do want to say, talking about history, because that's what I'm going to be studying.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. It might not be pretty. It might not be cool. But the one thing that it does serve, it teaches us lessons.
That's right.
Yes.
And when you have people putting efforts into practically rewrite or erase, those lessons aren't being learned.
I see it, man.
Right.
I see it.
So that's why we need to teach history to our young folks.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
It's imperative. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, for your time and what you're doing. You going to be here next week?
Yeah.
Are you?
I'll shadow next week.
Okay, good. All
I'll
right.
jump in next
Well, thank y'all. We'll see y'all next week.
All right.
thank you, Mike.